Hi, everybody. I'm Diana Gray, the America Community Marketing for UiPath. And tonight I have with me Tracy Dixon, who works for Centric Consulting, and she's a UiPath MVP 3 times. I also have Nicolas Erlichman, who works for GoGrow, and he also is an MVP. He's been an MVP with us for 2 years. So tonight we're going to go over how you get help with your automation challenge. And I'm going to turn it over to Nicolas and Tracy.
Hi guys, I just sent in the chat. We'd love for you guys to put your videos on so we have folks to look at if possible. There's a new feature in Zoom. If you guys want to choose a special studio effect to have on during the session, that would be pretty fun. It gives you the option for facial hair, eyebrows, makeup, that type of thing, but have a little fun before we get started. All right, so today's session, we're primarily focused on just any challenges that you guys have had with the Solve Your First Automation Challenge, either on the Microsoft side or on the Google side. So we can walk through the workflow to make sure everybody understands that. But let us know when you've got a studio effect on so we can take a look. It's a pretty fun feature. So, but before we walk through the workflow, anyone have any specific issues still with getting the tool itself, just StudioX to work? Any issues with installation, anything like that? And feel free to reply back in chat or to, I don't know if they have the ability to talk now, Diana. All right. And can oh, I can't hear you, Diana, if you're talking.
Yes, if you have any questions, can you please put them in the chat? And then I'll make sure that you can take yourself off mute if you want to talk.
All right.
As well.
So any specific issues that you want to ask about regarding the workflow itself or getting things to work before we walk through the workflow? If you want to let us know you'd like to ask a question, Diana, just message in the chat and then Diana will unmute you.
Yeah, they can unmute themselves, Tracy.
Oh, you can now? Okay.
Yeah, so why don't we talk about what the first automation challenge was? Does anybody want to tell us what you worked on?
Anyone? Volunteers? How many of you guys used the Microsoft Excel version or did the Microsoft Excel version versus Google? If you guys want to either talk or reply in the chat, either one.
So Stacy said that they used Excel, okay, as did Susanna.
Oh, they can't unmute.
They can, Tracy.
So let's see, you guys still having trouble unmuting or is it working now for you?
Susanna, can you unmute yourself and just let us know if it works?
Yeah, no, it works. It works fine.
Okay.
Or it works fine for me, at least. But it was the little button came up. I didn't try before the little, you can unmute came up. I didn't have any problems with mine. The first time I ran through it, I did have a problem saving the Excel file as a PDF because it didn't like the variable name when I put it into the text box of like, you know, PDF slash file name dot PDF, but I just kind of redid it,
Mhm.
deleted it out and redid it, and it worked fine. So
So you had a slash in the variable name?
I think that it took it, instead of being like, oh, that's the variable is called file name, it thought the word should be file name, if that makes sense. So it saved a PDF called file name.pdf instead of saving it as invoice1.pdf. So I redid it and it worked fine.
Probably was a quote or quote marks in there somewhere. Anything typically in quotes it will take as literal.
Yeah.
So if you had like quote file name, then it would give you just that, whatever's exactly in the quote.
Yeah, no, I think it was because when I did it as the text, and I think I actually put a space between file and name, but there wasn't a space in the variable file name. So it's like, oh, obviously you want to name this file space name.
Nicolas, you want to talk about restrictions on variable names, or do you want me to take that one?
So basically for the file names, it's the same as you would use for any file name in your computer. And basically you can put everything as long as you put it in double question mark and double quotes. You can put almost every name that you can think of, as long as you don't use any strange characters. For example, you can't use any ampersand. You can use dash, you can use underscore, numbers and letters, but you can use any other strange character that you can't also use when you create files on your computer. Basically, the same happened as you did there, but if you actually do everything inside the double quotes, you shouldn't be having that problem of file name space and just putting that as your name. So maybe we can review that and see why it was happening. Because if you say, I don't know, my file name, it's called, for example, download space example space, I don't know, something dot x lsx, that should be okay for a file name. That shouldn't create a file name just with the first part.
And there's a link that gives you some more information on the different types of variables. They have to be started with an underscore or an alphabetic character. So you can't start them with a number or a symbol, and can't have symbols in there at all.
You also may face an issue depending on the configurations on your computer, but this is for, I would say, 99% of computers, on how long your file name can be, considering all the folder names that you have. For example, you cannot have like one folder inside another and so on, or 20 file folders and then the file name. If all that path, it's over 256 characters, that it's also going to give you problems. So the things that you see when you work with G Drive, or when you work maybe with folders in SharePoint or something that you can do almost anything, that may face you issues if you have the folders in your computer. So that's also another issue that you need to consider when working with files in your computer.
All right. Are you guys able to see the PDF with the workflow in it, or no?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So what we were doing, this is the Microsoft Office version. The Google one is very similar. So before you start working on anything, whether it be big or small, always work out the series of steps on paper or in a document of some sort before you start working on it. It's really easy to get lost in what you're doing if you don't have a plan laid out, at least high level, for what you're going to do. So I still do this to this day. It goes so much better if you've worked out, logically what you would do by hand if you were doing the same thing just completely on your own without the help of a robot. So just so you know, conventions, that the rectangles are typically a process step where the diamonds here are a decision point where you've got to pick a direction one way or the other. So in this automation, It opens Outlook. And interestingly enough, you don't have to actually have Outlook installed on the machine, which is a really cool thing because the tool is working with Outlook kind of in the cloud. So not a requirement to have it downloaded locally in general. It goes through each email that is received today from this particular address. And remember, we talked last week about project notebooks and really putting anything as a best practice in your project notebook that might change in the future. So you don't have to recreate the whole automation if there is something small that changes. It downloads the email attachment locally for each one and loops through all of those, whatever number came in that fits this set of parameters. So it has a decision point to make after it downloads each one, goes to the next email. If there is an email, it repeats this loop, as many as there are. If there are not any more emails, then it carries on to the next part here. So opens the website, and then another decision where it will check to see if there's a file there. It goes through each one and actually repeats this full process. So you see the line down at the bottom, this full series of steps. Each time there's a file downloaded until there aren't any more. And then it will send out the PDF in a single email at the end. So the series of steps that it goes through for the download, just opening each file with Excel, typing a code, clicking an arrow button, and then similar to the others, another decision point, check if the client code generates a no discount text. If it does not, then it will go through this path. If it does, it will go through this path, one of the two. And then it will write in Excel. It separates the file name out and then saves locally. And then we'll, if there is another file back up here, repeats that whole sequence all the way through. And then we'll finish here. Any questions on the workflow itself, on the series of steps? All right. What can we help with on your automation? Does anyone have something that they're stuck on that they want to talk through or share?
If you want, you can share your screens too. And that way Tracy and Nicolas can look at it to help you.
Or anyone even want to go through what they created? So others can, each time you do something, it's usually different than, so no automations will be the exact same. So it's always nice to see how other people accomplish it also. Quiet group, any questions at all? Or anyone needs specific assistance with their automation?
If you don't need assistance and everything did go right for every one of you, does anyone want to share, say, I don't know, which part do you think it's the most difficult part to do, or which one you encounter some errors, problems, or something that say, hey, I learned something about after doing this for the first time?
Yep, if you guys had any issues with a particular step, it's likely that other folks in the crowd did, and I'm sure they'd love to hear about it.
Please don't be shy, you guys. These guys are here to help you.
And then also happy to go through the Google side of things for any of you guys that did the Google version.
Do you have any Google Workspace productivity tools you can talk about?
Nicolas, do you have any of those?
Actually don't have many things, but we can go over what we have in the marketplace. I think that in most cases, at least for company-wise, we tend to use Office, and it's more on a personal use that I've played around and do things with the Google part, but it's not that I have so many useful tools for the business side, at least for that.
Do you know when
But
you would use the Google Workspace typically?
I think you have two most common scenarios. That would be when you do things for yourself. It's more probably, I don't know, probably you already have a Google Space, I don't know, Sheet Drive, you use Gmail, I don't know, Google Slides and Google Doc more oftenly than what you would use, I don't know, Microsoft account and Excel in the cloud and those kind of things. Because when you are using things for yourself, you usually use Google's free accounts, not the paid ones from Microsoft.
Right.
And the other case is as long as your company uses G Suite. If your company uses G Suite, it's a no-brainer that you end up using everything from Google. But what I've seen in many companies is they have G Suite, but they also paid Microsoft Office tools like, again, Excel, Outlook, and Word. So on the business side, I haven't seen it used much. I've used it in a few companies, but it's just like a small part of the business world. At least that's been my experience till now.
So our company did actually use Google Workspace a few years ago with enterprise licensing for it. But I would agree that most companies these days have tended to migrate to the Microsoft products. But they do, the core functionality is similar to the web version of the Microsoft tools.
Yeah, and the latest activity packages are almost the same, and they work kind of interchangeably, at least, because unless you're trying to do something like really specific in Gmail or Outlook, that, I don't know, configuring some specific rules or those kind of things, or even if you're trying to do something really cool with Excel, let's say you're trying to do a pivot table, then you're probably not going to do anything around that using G Suite. But other than that, most of the same tools that you apply to one can translate almost directly to the same activity, but in the other tool. That's the beauty of the activity packages right now in Studio.
Okay. Well, let's ask for if anybody has any questions one more time. And then what I'm doing in the chat is I'm putting some ways that people can help themselves. You know, and so maybe you guys can talk about a few of these, like the Academy, the forum. If they do run into any problems, what would you suggest, please?
So I use both of these even now. That so the Academy has general lessons on where you can dig into a particular area. So if you find that, you know, that say that Excel activities are more difficult for you, you can always go and watch specific videos related to that content. Besides that, I personally use the UiPath community Slack channel most often because it's more conversational and I get oftentimes a quicker response. If there's a particular error that I get that I like to look up or, you know, see how other people solved it, I go out to the forum. And I'll also post questions out there if I think they might be tougher, where there's a pretty large community out there that responds. What about you, Nicolas?
Yeah, I tend to usually use the forum more, not so much the Slack channel, but that's more what's comfortable for me because when I started, I really didn't know the Slack channel existed and there wasn't so many people answering questions and those kind of things. So it worked a lot better using the forum, but I do agree that at least if you have less experience or if you want to maybe a quick answer or as you mentioned, like some more of face-to-face, even though you are just having a chat, it feels more natural to have a conversation through the Slack channel instead of just posting and getting answers in the forum. And I will say that go to Slack channel when you don't have a concrete definition in what your problem is, and go to a forum when you know where your issue is. For example, let's say that you already know that you're trying to use some specific activity to use to do something and it's failing, and you know it's failing because in name, for example, then you can search that in the forum or even post a question in the forum. But if you don't know where the issue actually is, it would be harder to get a response or a good response in the forum.
Right. Well, the other thing that's nice, I think, about the forum is it's a good way to learn too, because other people will ask questions and you may not have even thought of that question. So if you go there, you can not only see the questions, but see how they're solved. And so that kind of helps engage you in the community and helps you figure things out.
Yeah, and as Tracy already mentioned, it's like there's probably someone that already faced the same issue that you did, or even not an issue. Let's say that you want to do something and you don't know how to do it. You can search, I don't know, how to do X in UiPath. And if you search that in Google, I'm pretty sure that 90% of the top 5 or top 10 links are going to get you to the forum, to a post that someone already asked the same question, and you'll find a solution to your problem.
Okay. So I am going to Wayne, do you want to speak up?
Yeah, I'll even turn on the camera for this since you unmuted.
Oh, great.
Okay, good. Hey, thank you. I'm enjoying the lessons. I have already started the Academy some time ago, and I did the RPA challenge, and I've done a few things. I even did some work projects here at the job. I'd love to show that stuff, but I'm not at the job, and I have like three monitors there. One of them is a desktop application. I cannot control where the screen's open, right? So I'm not going to mess with that. What I will ask a question about real quickly, I didn't do a deep dive in it, but I found that building the workflow using the sequence, using sequences and whatever, however you want to build it, using a flowchart, all that seemed to work real good. I had a problem using the recorder, right? Just recording complex, a little more complex than usual web scenarios, right? If it would just click, I'm gonna do a type into, I'm gonna do this, and this drop down has this values, I think that would work, but I'm in an insurance company. And if anybody know anything about insurance forms, then it's complex. You don't even understand your own insurance. So the application itself to get insurance is difficult. I just want to know that, am I thinking unclear or wrong? I just don't have enough experience that the recording will work just as seamless as the sequence building, shouldn't it?
Are you talking about an application like a Guidewire, that type of thing, where you're trying to automate the front end of a tool like that?
Well, no, they're I'm trying to think what they're building the front end on. We talk about it all the time. It's just I'm in a meeting now and it's just blank.
So I haven't found anything where I can't get it to work. Now there are different options as far as automating with the UI that can make it a lot easier, one option versus the other, and you don't necessarily know which it's going to be. So I would definitely cycle through all of the different UI options. So like whether you're going to use simulate or, use some of the other choices. I have found with Guidewire being an insurance product, I've automated with that, and the back end is more like a Java-based application, although it's a custom language for Guidewire. It is more Java than it is the .NET products. I found that the defaults may not always work 100% with those, so you have to play around a bit, but I haven't found anything where it just didn't work. So it may just be a matter of you trying out the few different options to see which responds best.
And see, when you say options, now you're speaking to having the modern versus having the classic, because the classic give you options in the recording, right? But your modern does not. And I think that that's another challenge that I have had since we're speaking. Hey, what challenges you have? As I learn, and if I just grab a video, you know, they may be coming from, you know, modern or classic. So it took me a minute to even figure that out as a beginner.
So yeah, you still have options. So if I turn on the app web recorder, here are the different input methods that, well, can you guys see the screen?
Yeah, I can't see it.
Yeah, that's all.
All right.
Now it is.
So here are your three different versions: hardware, events, simulate, and window messages. I always try to use simulate first because that gives you full control of your mouse, where you can have the automation running and still just type away on the same PC without any interaction. It doesn't take over your mouse and keyboard, but you have these other two options here. So have you tried all three of those in what you're recording?
No, I'm Tracy. I guess my confusion, and you know, first of all, lack of experience, but the other confusion is in the classic. That choice is different. It's a choice of having a web app, a Centric app, some other kind of. It's a choice of what you're capturing as far as the application. This here is speaking of hardware, Windows messages. I'm not even sure why we want to capture that and automate that. So I'm not sure of those events.
Basically, my first question would be, so for what you are saying right now, you're using the classic experience. That would be correct, right? Well, you see the different types of recorder. You don't see just one recorder, as you could see what Tracy was showing. Let me just show you my screen a little bit.
Right. So they're totally different.
So you don't have this app web recorder, computer vision recorder, and use, right? You have like multiple
I do have that.
Okay.
That's what I have.
So
and I know how to turn it where I can use the classic. It's just that they're two different things. They have different options.
Yeah, for sure. It's like I do agree that it's a little bit tricky when you're starting right now, that you don't know where to get your information from, and it's a little bit harder when you don't know that you have the classic experience, you have the modern experience, and where to go with. I would say that stick to the modern experience because it's a lot easier to use, and it has a lot of things pre-built and that are being done in the background, so you don't have to worry about that. So when you say, hey, I'm doing the classic version that I have, web recorder, desktop recorder, basic recorder, computer vision recorder, that all those things are already built in these recorders that you have right now. So if you stick into the modern experience, unless you're doing something with a remote desktop or something like that, as soon as, even if you're using the desktop applications or a web application in your computer, you just need to stick with the Apple web recorder, right? So let's say, for example, that I open Microsoft Edge and I go to, I don't know, let's say the RPA challenge that you mentioned that you already done it. So I go here into the rphchallenge.com, and then I just need to hit like app web recorder, right? So I'll click here and I'll have my recorder. And what Tracy was mentioning is they have this option here that it says hardware band, simulate, Chrome MPI, and window messages or auto, right? So the difference with this is in the classic mode, you also had this, but you didn't see it right there in the recorders because you have two layers of things that you need to choose. First, you need to choose if it was a desktop, web, or a basic recorder, and then you have the input methods, right? So this where we are saying hardware, simulate, Windows message. This is the way that UiPath communicates with the application. So if I say hardware events and I want to just, I don't know, indicate this application and say click here, what it says is that it would be interacting with the browser as if you were actually moving your mouse and typing in your keyboard, right? So be the hardware, the actual physical keyboard and the mouse that you have. The other options, what it does is it does not actually use the hardware and actually simulates or does a Windows message. There are technologies that I won't get like too technical and talk a little about it, but there are two other options that were kind of in background. That was Tracy was mentioning when she says, hey, you're freeing your mouse and your keyboard to use it. And what this does is, depending on your application, some of those work and some of those don't work. For example, if you're using a Java application and you try to use Simulate, like I would say that 75 to 90% of the time, it's not going to work. But if you use Windows messages, it's most certainly going to work like around 90% of the applications. Okay. So what Tracy was trying to say was, hey, try to use your recorder. And if it doesn't work, just try to play around with this kind of button that appears here and change it from auto to hardware to simulate or Windows messages, and say, hey, I turn it to Windows message. And then I say, hey, go here. And I'll say, I don't know, hello, confirm. I don't have this, right? And what Charter does here with the new web recorders is you will see type or click at the same time that you are trying to record it. So if I click, for example, the button, it's going to track the button and it's going to click it. So you will actually know if it's working or not, because the automation, the recorder is going to do it as soon as you indicate that you need to do it.
Okay. And then those options and the new recorder, I had not tried those. I'll give that a shot.
Yep.
They're basic.
Since the old versions somewhere. You just have to locate. Hopefully you're using more updated versions of everything, but they're in there. Yeah. You just have to look for them.
Well, UiPath is updating itself. So of course I'm on the latest version. But that's an issue there, because I'll look at one video, next thing, I don't have that version. It don't look like that.
Well, with community, yes. With the enterprise version, you can, hopefully people keep current. That's the idea. So you can take advantage of the best functionality, but you can delay upgrading with the enterprise version.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to tie up too much time, but I did want to participate since nobody else was saying anything. And let you know that, all the things that I run into, and I'm still, going through. For example, there's something called the Excel processor scope. Yeah. That's the new one. It was Excel application scope. So when I went through one of the trainings, I kept trying to find it. I just used a Excel file. Then later on, found that I could actually use something called Excel process scope to replace Excel application scope. But I found that out later.
Yeah, so basically the main underlying issue is that when you go from the classic experience to the modern experience, there are huge, big changes that are around that. For example, you don't have open browser or attached browser. You have just use application browser. The problem with that is that if you come from the old world, let's call it the old world and the new world, it could be a little complicated to find all the new things. I do urge you to go through the courses in the academy for the modern experience, because you will see everything that it's new and how to use it. But the main thing is that if you just start using the modern experience from scratch, it's really, really much easier, because you don't have open browser, attached browser, and those kind of things. You just have an open window and a touch window. You just have like use application or browser. The same goes for Excel. The name of the Excel process scope kind of collides a little bit with the old name, but the actual activity that you need to use whenever you're going to use something is a use application browser, use Excel file, use Gmail. Those activities are the ones that you need to use to indicate an application that you're going to use.
Yeah. The activities have some different fields. Either they might have a field or they may have dropped the field, So yeah, it's a challenge. I would think that if you take the test would be on modern. if you would actually go sign and take the test. So that confused. What should I know? Study and keep in my head if I was going to go take a certification test.
So I don't know, Tracy, what's your opinion? I would urge you to go through the modern experience, because since I think the version from 2021.10, there was the last long-term version that was released last year. The modern experience, it's from that point forward, the default experience to use in Studio. So everything coming new to the platform, it's probably gonna be done in the modern experience. So if you get like new videos, new features and everything, new courses, I'm pretty sure that almost everything is going to be done in the modern experience. But I don't know what's your thoughts on that, Tracy.
Yeah, I'm looking up I just took the test again, like maybe a month ago. I'm thinking it may not have been on it quite yet, because the test isn't updated like every month or anything. They keep it stable for a while. So I'm going to double check for you. I know using the modern experience, it's a lot less time to automate. So I encourage you to go that direction, because it is that things are reusable. You can set something up and one automation and reuse those same screens where they're consistent. They worked here and you can bring them over. There are a lot of benefits, and it's a whole lot. I mean, the idea is to make it a lot faster for you to automate. It definitely does. So it's worth learning that side of things, and it's easier to use too.
Okay. Well, I'm not fighting it. It's just, if I go out there, I have to, if you go on YouTube and you do a search for something UiPath, you need to put 2022 or something after that search, so that you can get the latest, whatever recording that person had, so that you can see, maybe you'll have a chance to see modern. Otherwise, you'll see the classic.
And that's the time to reach out to the forum also, or the Slack channel to ask about, what you'll probably find that information on the forum already, what the activity names are that approximate.
Yeah.
So I would reach out.
Yeah, it took a few videos to see that if you right click an activity at the bottom is help, and it brings up the whole UiPath, document for that activity. That helps. But I didn't, I was many videos in before I saw that.
Yeah, so it is still, as of when I pulled the document within the past couple of months, it is the classic experience still that the certification exam is on.
Okay.
So you can see that here on page 4 of this is the advanced RPA developer certification. Now, things could have changed in the last few weeks, so always good to check, but it was classic.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. The one thing that I would say to you, if you're seeing a video on YouTube or something and you want to know like quickly if it's modern or not, just look into the ribbon bar, and if you see just app-web recorder, just like one button, then it's modern experience.
Yeah.
And you can know if it is or it's not, just what it works for you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you.
No, thank you for asking the question. That's why we're here.
All right.
Thanks, Wayne. Mauricio, do you have any questions? Well, thank you everybody for being here tonight, especially you, Tracy and Nicolas. Wayne, thank you for helping and ask some questions. That was really great. And we have another session tomorrow night, so look forward to seeing you there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.